אני מאוד שמח לראות כאן, ולפתש כמה מהעבודות שלנו זה התחיל בישראל, אבל עברית שלי זה לא טוב. So I will speak in English.
רק להגיד לקהל שדידו עשתה עלייה בהיותה ילדה בכיתה א' וחזרה לאנגליה בהיותה בכיתה ב', כל העברית זה בין א' לב', אז זה באמת יפה.
סליחה. I'd like to share with you some of our work, which started with me trying to figure out how to improve the outcomes we had from children's rehab, spending lots of time trying to study children's brains and what they were doing on our standardized assessments, and comparing children to see who would benefit, who might not benefit. But what we were forgetting to do was to listen to the voices of the children. And when I was sitting back and actually hearing what they had to say, I'd hear things like, well, games at school, they always choose me last. And when the other side wins, well, they gloat when they win. Or, I am a one-handed boy. I don't want to be associated with them meaning the other children with a hemiplegia. Or, they won't sit next to me at school as they don't want to catch my disease. Or, about some new friends, well, my new friend is Paddy. He's an older boy because he's grown up and he's okay, which says a lot in how this child might be thinking. So what I decided to do was to listen further to the children.
They always say, like, why do you have a broken hand? They always say that. I don't have a broken hand, do I? It's just hemiplegia. Isn't it?
It's sometimes quite hard because you get frustrated doing certain things, or you sometimes wonder in your dreams what's it like to have two normal hands that actually work.
So that led us to the background to a study we undertook last summer to try and understand some of the psychosocial factors that we know may influence development and the sense of movement of efficacy. And we know that up to 61% of children with unilateral cerebral palsy may have persistent mental health problems, and that these therapeutic outcomes from intervention may be influenced by the children's engagement in their therapy programs, their sense of mastery motivation. But yet few studies have investigated the psychosocial factors that interact with development. So we decided to undertake a mixed method study to explore the expectations as well as the experiences of children with unilateral cerebral palsy who participated in a 2-week, 6 hours a day, intensive, magic-themed, bimanual intensive therapy summer day camp program. And we wanted to explore the perspectives of children through semi-structured interviews. So they undertook their program in which I integrated magic tricks and magic activities into an occupational therapy program of intensive bimanual training. And the children would put on a magic show at the end of the 2 weeks on a real stage with real magicians as real performers. We undertook a repeated study within study design where assessments and interviews were undertaken before and after the summer day camp. And we also had a 3-month follow-up. We used a number of quantitative scales, which as a researcher I tend to rely on probably overly much, using the Children's Hope Scale to try and capture the child's sense of positiveness, their ability to achieve a goal that they're striving towards. We used the sense of a test of hand function to see, well, what were the actual skills of their hands? And the Children's Hand Experience Questionnaire, which in this case was predominantly completed by parents reporting on the skills and how bothered the children were about their performance in different daily living tasks, and a semi-structured interview. The CHEQ, the Children's Hand Experience Questionnaire, for those of you who might not know it, reports on 29 activities. It asks them, is this an activity that children do? These are all two-hand tasks that are usually done with 2 hands. And they ask then the experience of how they're using that hand. How efficient is the grip compared to their peers? How much time does it take? Because sometimes the kids can do the task, but it just takes them too long. It's not a functional task. And then how bothered they are that their skill is good or poor. This is just our group of children. I'm not going to spend too much time on the quantitative data, but to say that yes, all of the quantitative scales look better after intervention. But when we probed it in more detail, what we see is it's not straightforward. Some of the children had a very high sense of being very positive, but they didn't make much progress or it didn't change how frustrated they were. And other children had a low sense, the children at the bottom didn't feel very positive, yet were reported as being less bothered. So there's some sort of mismatch as how we as adults are seeing and reporting what children are feeling inside. And this is, again, you see here, this group of children who are discrepant from how we see them. They're having, at the end of it, 3 months, they're feeling very positive, or they're not feeling so positive in their frustration. And whether it's, as Ravit says, maybe it's that frustration that might drive them. And for some children, it might be held against them. So what did the children actually say when we asked them? We found some themes, and I haven't finished. When I embarked on a qualitative study, I didn't realize quite how time-consuming it would be. So I apologize, the full in-depth analysis hasn't been done. But these are the first themes that have come out from the children. I've yet to compare it with what their parents are saying. But we found that the common themes were coming out as abilities. Their types of games they were playing tended to be more playful and unstructured. Very few of them said they had any competence in any skill that had a competitive component to it. So they liked running around. None of them really liked playing a sport. They commented a lot about friendships, or what was actually quite interesting is the lack of ability to talk about friends when I first interviewed them. Most of the children went quiet. And what they said about their therapy, well, if you're a therapist, you might want to cover your ears. They were quite honest as how much they hated it. And what does having a hemiplegia actually mean to them? What were the sorts of positive and negative statements that came out? And what were their expectations before I compared them with what happened, what they were saying about the therapy afterwards? Bearing in mind that most of the children had said how much they hated their therapy, none of them really said they hated their therapist, I'm glad to say. But comparing that, so what were the perceived benefits to the child, and what was the capacity for change? I must just add a note here that the past summer and the summer before, I was no longer running the magic camps. They were delivered by somebody else who was not a therapist per se, and they changed an essential ingredient. They had the magicians reward the children with stickers and ratings as their ability to perform the magic tricks, which is very different from the way I designed the program to be meaningful and intrinsically motivating for the children, so the children would decide when they were ready to perform the magic tricks. But the children, what they were saying about their experiences and self-identity. So it's a bit weird, because I didn't know that they had a hand like me. This is my first time in the magic camp. It felt a bit funny, because I feel like, it's fine with my friends now, my new friends, and getting to know them. I'd sit with them at lunchtime and play with them and do lots of magic tricks and have fun and all that kind of stuff. So his experience at the camp, he'd never met another child with a hemiplegia, and how weird it was at first, a little 7-year-old, who's then saying, actually, it's quite okay, and my new friends I can be with. So before, here's a boy, it's a bit annoying. It doesn't do what I want it to do all of the time. I want it to be exactly like this hand, showing me his dominant hand. Another child also mentioned annoying. I have to do them exercises every time, and stretches and things, and annoying. I have to go outside of the class with 3 others every day. Annoying. It lasts for months. Too much. 4 months, 12 months. We have to do them all months. Very annoying. Getting very animated, very angry. Every year. Every year. It's just a bit weird. Kind of just weird. I don't know. I can't really, because I have the right, because the right hand's got all the goodness in it and all the strongness in it. This hand hasn't really thing in it, because it's kind of got a bit of weak in it. It's got a weak stuff in it. So the notion of a good hand and a bad hand, and even 1 or 2 of the children gave their hand a name or called it he or she is not behaving today. So after the camp, these same children, I just ignore it. I don't really feel bad about it. I don't really talk about anything from it. I don't really think about it unless I have to. I just ignore it. I think it's just normal. So this is the boy who'd got very animated to how annoying his hand was. So it's cool because you're different, and the things you do to actually make your hemiplegia easier are actually really fun. I like being different, so I like having hemiplegia because you're different. You're not the same. You're different in your own way.
Dido?
It's a bit like hands. When you have one hand that is weaker than the other, but then do a bit of practicing and we'll get better probably. So it will get better. You think with practice. So the challenge for me now is to understand how expectations and experience can shift our expectations. But here's what another little child said. I really liked this camp. So like today, they were going to be a bit strict because it was the camp that they wanted you to do, the magic show, that stuff that makes sure that you can do all that stuff that you want and like to do your magic tricks. I think this child really picked up on how anxious we were for the children, for their performance. Anyway, yeah, so you get better and the magic tricks because they want you to get it straight on so you don't fail the magic trick, so that you can be a great magician. So the discussions that I'm left with are trying to understand this extraordinary complex relationship between perspectives of confidence and competence. And what we've seen is that higher initial positivity does show greater positive changes in perceptions of competence and feeling less bothered by difficulties following an intensive intervention with other children. And that the children with a lower degree of positivity still made improvement in their hand skills. But children report quite different experiences from those elicited in our questionnaires. And what I'm trying to understand is how we can consider whether the expectations or perceptions of confidence and competence may actually influence the engagement and progress they then have in movement skills when we offer them a therapy program. And so here are some of the comments. Some of them are from the children in our Israeli camps. And I was particularly moved because one of the things I was struck by is that these children know better than I do. So I took the older children and I asked them if they would like to help me with my program and be my trainers for next year. So I employed them. Instead of the students from Tel Aviv University or from Oxford Brookes University, I had some of our students, our children from the previous years. And the one child, when she said to me, "Thank you for turning my disability into an ability," I had to say, "No, I just showed you the door. You opened it and you walked through it." But so they've taught me a lot, the children. And I would just like to end.
It's amazing. My goal would be to see it rolled out in every hospital throughout the country, because it won't only help children with hemiplegia, ultimately adults who've had a stroke. We all love having fun. Why shouldn't those people relearn the ability to use their limbs that have been affected by stroke by doing a bit of magic?
Thanks to all this amazing team that have made this possible, but particularly the children and their families and all our funders, and Betty C. Shapiro as they sponsored a camp here in Israel in 2011.